if somebody acquires a vacant house, or a house that has been vacant for a certain period, or a house that's absolutely derelict, and they want to bring the house up to livable standards, there are very generous grants to assist them in paying for the work. First of all, if the house is vacant, the house must be vacant for at least 2 years. Now, in that case, you can apply for a vacant house grant. The maximum you can get will be 50,000. In other words, if you're spending 100,000, the maximum grant will be 50,000. However, if the house is derelict, you can get a maximum grant of up to 70,000, but you'll have to prove, of course, that it is derelict. And the best way to do that is to get an engineer's report. Usually, what they recommend is the report from a structural engineer. Now, there's one note of caution here. People, when they see the headlines about this grant, they're naturally enthusiastic about it. But the downside, of course, is that you must spend the money before you claim the grant. So in other words, you must be in a position to get the money, whether by borrowing it or whatever, before you can actually draw down the grant, because you cannot draw down the grant until the council come out and sign off on it when the job is done. Now, the position, as I say, is that you must be. The reason for doing the job must be that you intend to live in the house or rent it out. They're the two criteria. You're either living in it, you either intend to live in it yourself, or to rent it out. Now, there are certain conditions, as I've said. The house must have been vacant for at least 2 years. Secondly, the house must have been built before the year 2008. That's before the 1st of January 2008. You must either own the house or be in the process of purchasing it. You'll have to be able to establish that if you are in the process of purchasing it. You'll have to have paid naturally your local property tax, and your tax affairs must be in order. And as I've said, you must be doing the job with a view to either living in the house or renting it out. Now, also all the general type of work that you can imagine would be involved in renovating a house and bringing it up to livable condition is covered. For example, work on foundations, clearing the foundations, etc., raising the walls, skirting boards, fascias, painting and decorating, etc., heating, plumbing, lighting, etc. Interestingly, you can also put in a claim for professional services. For example, if you have to employ an engineer or a surveyor, there is a grant towards, as part of the 50 or 70,000, you can claim for the work that they actually do. Now, people have often asked me, what about a situation where you inherit or you acquire a complete wreck of a house and you demolish it completely and set about rebuilding it? The grant does not cover that situation. Another question that usually arises is work to make the house more energy efficient. Is that covered? No, there's a separate grant scheme for that from the SEAI. Now, how you apply actually is you apply to the local authority, which is the local council. You get the application form from the council, you complete it. It's always handy when you've completed the form before you send it in to make contact with the relevant official in the council. Every council now has an official who is dealing specifically with the vacant house grant or the derelict house grant. So it would be worth your while to talk to that particular individual who will guide you through the process. Now, as I say, you have to prove that the house has been vacant for 2 years. And how do you do that? Well, utility bills, whatever. The general way I've come across is that the council will look for the ESB record, and if it shows that the ESB hasn't been connected to the house, or the house hasn't been using electricity or any significant amount of electricity for at least 2 years, then that generally gets you over that particular hurdle. Now, what about the situation? People ask me, what about the situation where they can't get the relevant documentation or whatever, for whatever reason, the utility bills or the ESB record or whatever? Well, the local authorities have discretion in that case to accept a sworn affidavit. Now, it's up to each individual local authority, I suppose, depending on the circumstances of each particular case, whether or not they accept a sworn affidavit. But it's important to note that they have the discretion to do that if they so wish. You must also submit proof that you either own the property or that you're in the process of acquiring the property. If planning permission is an issue here, you must show copy of the fact that you've got planning permission. You'll also, of course, with the form, you'll have to submit a quote for the work from a builder or a contractor who is registered for tax, etc. You must also sign a form, by the way, saying that you intend to live in the house or rent it out for a period of at least 10 years. And if you don't do that, if you don't live in the house or rent it out for a period of 10 years, let's assume you sell the house within a 10-year period, you're going to be facing a clawback. In other words, the council will be looking either for all or part of the grant, to be recouped, to be paid back to them, depending, of course, on how long you've lived in the house. And it's important, as I've said, that your tax affairs are in order, because that can be, it would be useful, I think, maybe to just contact the revenue and get a tax clearance certificate. That is definitive proof that your tax affairs are in order. When you have all that submitted, when you're approved, you have 13 months to complete the job. That's the period you've got to complete the job, 13 months. As I say, the only downside about these grants is that you have to come up with the money in advance. Now, I've made various suggestions to the Minister about stage payments, etc., on the basis that, it's not easy to come up with all this money in advance for lots of people. I'm told that the advice that available to the government is that stage payments wouldn't work for all sorts of reasons. They'd be too complicated, etc., too much paperwork. So the reality is that you have to, before you embark on looking for a grant for a derelict or vacant house, you must ensure that you have the money yourself in place to do the job, and then, provided everything is satisfactory and you've satisfied the vacant possession criteria, etc., and that your tax affairs are in order and you have a legitimate contractor, you can claim the money back. And it does represent a significant assistance to people who are trying to bring a house up to livable condition.